It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Kelly Bielefeld, our new USD 259 Superintendent.
So, as Hollis said, I'm Kelly Bielefeld, Superintendent of Schools for Wichita 259. I've been on the job for a little bit over, or right around 2 months now. So started July 1st, but was announced right around spring break of last year, and we started the transition at that point with Dr. Thompson to become the new superintendent. So a little bit about me. I am a father of 8. Our oldest is a sophomore in college at Newman University. She plays soccer there. Our youngest is 5, and we have kids of all shapes and sizes in between. So we are a busy family. I've been with the district for 3 years, and prior to that was in Clearwater as assistant superintendent. So I've been a principal in Clearwater, Renwick, Derby, and then taught in Goddard before that. And for a couple years was at the Catholic school in Kingman. St. Patrick was principal there. So that's a little bit about me. Today I'm sharing with you guys just a snapshot of who we are as a district, a little bit about what we're doing, some achievement data, and then a little bit of talk about kind of where we're headed here in the future. And then we'll try to leave some time at the end for some questions too, if you'll have questions. So just want to make sure we all know who we are, because I know some of us are Wichita natives and some of us are not. But Wichita Public Schools is, I think it's now 153. Is that right, Wendy? So this year we tick up one more, but we've been around 153 years, almost as long as the city. We are an institution. We are a tradition in town, and many of us have benefited either ourselves by graduating through Wichita Public Schools or our kids have. We are the 3rd largest employer in Sedgwick County. Spirit, Textron, Wichita Public Schools. So we're a vital part of the economic system. The staff that we hire, what we try to do for kids each and every day is important. We are an educational system, first and foremost. So we have 90 attendance centers, 94 buildings total. We have 27 CTE pathways, career and technical education. So that's different options for kids to enter the workforce and get workforce ready. And our enrollment of, like Hollis said, about 47,000 accounts for about 10 to 11% of the total population of Kansas students in public schools. So as goes Wichita, so goes the state in a lot of ways. We are also an open door. So we have 78.7% of our kids are living in poverty, and 16% of our kids have a diagnosed disability. So we take all kids. We don't turn anyone away. We welcome them all, and we try to do the best for every student in the district. So here's a little bit more about us when it comes to our demographics. This is last year's data. We haven't had our official numbers for this year yet. We'll have those in the next few weeks. But like we said, 47,000 students, and primarily Hispanic. That's our number one demographic group in the district. So here's what I plan to talk about today. I want to talk about the mission of Wichita Public Schools, what we do to prepare students, a little bit about academic outcomes. Then I want to how we achieve those goals. We, start with what are our goals, how we get there, and then how we all work together to build the future of Wichita. So we are trying to prepare our students for the future. The last 5 years, our strategic plan has been about future ready. So we're trying to get kids ready for the future, which, as you can imagine, is a moving target, right? We have kids in our schools today. Let's say my 3rd grade son is 8 years old. When he graduates in 2033, the world will be different. The future will be different. So we have to prepare him to be ready for what that means. So how do we do that? One of the things we do then is we try to focus on skills, particular sets of skills that kids need. So think of things like communication, technical know-how, working in a team. Those are skills that, regardless of what the future holds, that kid can take with them, and it will benefit them in the future. We hope that those skills are transferable and adaptable. We know that the people that enter the workforce today will likely run through 5 to 7 different careers over the course of their lifetime as an employee. That's a big number. So those skills that we talked about, they have to be transferable, right? You have to be able to take your know-how to do one thing and apply it to another. So I don't know how Jason got the skill to do what he just did, but he just transferred it today and helped me out with my PowerPoint, right? So those skills being transferable and adaptable are really important. And then we want to try as much as possible to connect them to something meaningful. And you'll kind of hear this as a theme throughout what I'm talking about today. Connecting it to something meaningful means that it's relevant to the kid and what they're learning. We have kids all the time that may be unmotivated in the classroom, and then something sparks them. And that might be a fine arts class or esports or a CTE class. You know, I never knew I liked to work on cars before. I got a chance to work on cars. This is cool. I want to do this as a job. All of a sudden their attendance goes up, their grades goes up because they finally found meaning in what they're learning. And that's even more important, I think, for today's kids. The Generation Z kids that are in our schools today, they like to ask why. They want to know how. Why do I need to do this? If you've ever raised teenagers, they probably ask you that, right? Why do I need to do this? So if we can connect it to something meaningful, that helps us to achieve those skills, to get them to those outcomes that we want. The meaningful place to do that, a lot of times, is in your world, right? Either in our community, in a civic engagement opportunity and community service, or in an internship, or in a job, right? There's no way to learn how to work unless you work, unless you have a job or an internship or that opportunity. So that's where the meaning comes into play, and that's why we need to work together as a community to help we give those kids those skills. So to achieve career readiness, we must invest in all our students because they're the future of our workforce. And sometimes when I talk about workforce, people always, they're thinking that kids graduate and go straight into, a trade or go straight to Spirit or something like that. The people that go to college are going to be part of the workforce too. So we say college and career ready. We say both. That we want kids ready to go into a career if that's what they want. But even if they choose to go to college or post-secondary, that also takes them on a track that eventually ends up in a career. At least we hope it does. So that's kind of the big picture of preparing our kids for the future. So at each level, that looks different. And this is another piece of kind of working with community and how we all work together to make this happen. So at an elementary level, we're not necessarily talking about you're going to get a job in this area. We're really just trying to get them excited, trying to get them curious, trying to kindle that flame of inspiration so that they get into whatever field that they want to, and they excel at it. So in elementary, we're trying to lay an academic foundation of good skills with computing, reading, literacy, and writing. And we're also giving them career exposure opportunities. So they might know, they go to the fire station and hear about, first responders, or they take a tour of, Textron and see what the careers are there. So it's really just about getting them excited about their future. In middle school, then, we start to explore those plans a little bit deeper and get them into the fields that they might be interested in and that our community needs. And we do that by creating a plan. We call it an individualized plan of study. Every kid in the district starts at 7th grade, and they basically keep an ongoing record of what they think they may want to do in their future. This is to help them plan ahead. Do 7th graders know what they really are going to end up doing in the future? No. You can probably guess. What do you think for our middle school kids? What are the top careers that they think they want to do? Professional athletes, number 1. Anyone know number 2? Social media is number 3, or influencer, and then video game designer is number 2, right? And why do they pick those things? That's what they see, and they're like, money, hey, those guys make money. I could do this and make money. And in each of those areas, there are people that make money, and they're very few, right? You can be an influencer and make money, but there's not many of them out there. But how do we take that passion and excitement and turn it into relevance, turn it into meaning, make it something that gets them engaged in school? That's what the plan is all about. So we're not asking kids to make a plan forever. We're asking kids to start thinking about their future. The exploration piece is important too, because we've started to do things with summer camps and after-school programs to get kids into locations around Wichita so that they're connected with our community's employers. One of the scary statistics about our state, and this is a couple years old, but we were the #2 exporter in the nation of talent. So we are graduating kids, especially from college, who are not staying in Kansas. They are going to Austin or Denver or St. Louis or somewhere else to find their future. So if we can connect those kids at an early age with the great opportunities we have here, we have a higher rate of, or a higher ability to retain that talent, which we know is critical for our future, for the future of the workforce here. If we want to grow as a city, we have to retain that talent. And then in high school, we start to execute that plan. All right, so you want to be a firefighter, you want to be an EMT, here's the track, here's the courses you need to take, here's where you need to head, here's a WSU Tech class, or here's a different opportunity. And I'll talk more in a second about market value assets, but we're trying to get kids, as they graduate, to have additional things with them in addition to the diploma. So I'll come back to that when we talk about Graduation Plus. So that's kind of the path of a student at Wichita Public Schools. So I want to stop for just a second and talk about academics, because I focused here a little bit on the academic foundation in elementary. Academics are all the way through this, and there's no way to be college ready without being academically ready. So you've probably seen some state assessment scores. You probably know some of the data about that. But I want to share in particular ACT data, because I think this is a little bit more something we can latch onto. This is a nationally normed test, right? This isn't something Kansas created for Kansas kids. This is given all across the nation. So I think this is a good litmus test for how our high schools are doing. The green chart here, I don't have any of it labeled because I had to do screenshots of it, but the green chart here is the number of students each year that take the ACT. So almost all of our kids take the ACT. We graduate about 2,600 seniors every year. So you can see our numbers here are 2,300 last year, 22. The low year is the COVID remote year where we had to bring kids in optionally to take the test, so our participation wasn't very high. But most of the time, we're upwards above 80% of participation. So we're giving an ACT test to every kid. I don't want to go to college. It doesn't matter. You're going to take the ACT anyway, okay? So keep that in mind when you look at our data. The numbers here then show the top one is 18-19, and as you go down, that's every year since. So we were at a 16.9 average for the district. And just to give us context, ACT is 0 to 36. So 36 is perfect, or the highest score you can get. So 16.9, right in the middle of the range. The state of Kansas is 19.9, so we're below the state average by a decent amount, but also not terrible. And a lot of our kids, we have a group of kids that get from a 12 to 18 that are probably not super motivated to take the test. And then we have a lot of our kids that are in the 18 to 24 category, which is on track for college for a lot of our colleges, especially in Kansas. So you'll see, though, the trend of our data, and I think it tells a story that we were making good progress with our ACT scores, and then we had a COVID year, and we went down 1.2 as an overall average for the district, from 17.3 to 16.1. We've recovered most of that, but we're not even back to where we were in 18-19. So and this is us in Wichita, but this is every district across the nation. This is districts that closed. This is districts that didn't close or go remote. This is districts that wore masks. This is districts that didn't wear masks. This is everybody. There was a monumental impact of COVID that hit all of our kids at all different levels that we're still trying to recover from. We are on our way to recovery, but we're still not quite there. So I think this tells not a different story, but maybe a story that's easier to understand. And if you want more data about any of this, we can break it out by our college-bound kids. We can break it out by racial groups, all that kind of stuff. But this is the big snapshot for the district. So to give you an idea of what you just saw, how does that compare? So this is all class of 22 data. So this isn't the year that just graduated. This is the year before. In Kansas, we give the ACT, we allow kids to take the ACT for free through KSDE. So 73% of our graduates take the ACT in the whole state, not in Wichita, in the whole state. So of the 17 states that give it to 70% or more of their kids, and there's some states at 100%, there's some states that are at 18%. So it's state to state how valuable the ACT is. Kansas was at a 19.9 as an average. That was the highest of all those 17 states that gave 70% or more of their graduates the ACT test. Texas tested 22% of their kids. The average was 19.8. Florida tested 46%. The average was 19.0. So I give you that context because in Kansas, we do well. Even though that story isn't always what we hear, we do well compared nationally in a lot of ways. And in Wichita, I mean, truth be told, that 19.9, you pull Wichita out of that, and as a state, we're higher because we test a lot of those kids and we bring that average down a little bit. That doesn't mean we're failing kids. I mean, you have to be able to read to get a 17 on the ACT. It doesn't mean we're failing kids. Do we have work to do? Absolutely, we have work to do, especially in the areas of math and science. Those are our lowest areas on the ACT that we see year over year that we think we could have programmatic fixes for. So the Wichita average for 2022 was that 16.1. So that was on the chart before, and that all comes from the ACT. So just wanted to give some overall context and how we think about achievement, how we look at data as a district. Third grade reading is one of our particular goals, and that's a whole nother presentation for another time. I'm trying to give a big overview here today. So I do want to finish this section with talking about Graduation Plus. This is something that the last 3 years in my office of College Career Readiness, we really developed this framework as goal 3 of the strategic plan. So essentially the premise of Graduation Plus, and this is what we've heard from industry, is that the diploma isn't enough, right? Kids that walk across the graduation stage, that's all well and good. Kids need to graduate, but they don't have everything they need to really be successful post-secondary. They need something else. So we created this model, and I know it's small and hard to see here, but it's on the website, and you may be able to see it better in there. That in the middle is the individualized plan that we talked about. Every kid from 7th grade up has a plan. What is your plan for the future? And then the smaller cogs on here are things that every kid should be able to get. ACTs on there, scholarships, we help them with that, completing a FAFSA, AVID, CT, pathways, employability skills. We try to get those for every kid. The lime green outside ones, those are what we call market value assets. So these are additional things that a student can get that help them to be successful after they graduate high school. So work-based learning or an internship. We know that if a kid does a semester-long internship, they are more likely to succeed in both college and career. Industry-recognized credentials. So we give, probably one of the ones that's familiar to us is the ASE, the Automotive Society of Engineers. When you take your car to get fixed, you probably see a sticker on the window that says ASE certified. We give our students ASE certification tests. So at South High and at North High, those kids can essentially go straight out and become an automotive tech. They can keep going to WSU Tech if they want to. But we give those credential tests. We allow for CNA testing. We allow for EMS testing, Adobe software products, Microsoft Office, all of those sorts of things. So those credentials help them to get work ready. And it's another achievement piece. It's another piece of data. Those are nationally normed tests. We don't get to say what the criteria are for an EMT, the EMT test. That comes from the national boards or the state boards. So if our kids can pass that, and 9 out of 10 Wichita public school kids passed that test last fall, then that's another achievement or another measure of achievement for us. Then down here we have college credit. We offer as much, if not more, college credit in all of our high schools as anybody, private or public, in the area. So you could go to North High, and if you took the right classes, you could get 53 credits upon graduation. You can get about 30 to 36 at every high school in our district. You have to be motivated, you have to take the test, you have to pay for it, and that can be a barrier for our kids, but we offer a lot of college credit. And the last one is entrepreneurial experience. So if you know anything about young entrepreneurs or what's called Empowered now, we have YE in all of our high schools, we do Market Day, and we really try to encourage kids to get that that opportunity to go become an entrepreneur if they want to start up a business, or at least know what it's like to create a business plan. So these are additional things that we're doing that we are trying to get all of our goal is 70%. I believe last year we ended about 40%, but we're still building this out and creating the system to track it and to make sure every kid has the equal opportunity. So those are the goals. We want achievement, we want good ACT scores, we want market value assets, we want kids to be future ready with skills for the future. So how do we achieve these goals? And there's kind of two things, one external, one internal, that are the main things we can do to achieve these goals. So one's called the social window, and the other, I want to talk about investment in staff. So with the COVID relief money our acronym that we use is called ESSER, Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief. We have invested in a program called Restorative Practices. And restorative practices is all about building cultures in schools to create community and connection with kids. And then when someone causes harm, that we repair that harm and we restore the relationship with the person. So we don't just we give a consequence, but we don't just give a consequence. We also work on repairing the relationship. So one of the tools that we use, one of the ways we look at it, is through what we call the social window. And I've used this with a lot of community presentations that I've done, because this isn't just about classrooms or schools or even the district. This is about all of us and how we need to work as organizations together. So you can see the matrix here. It has support on one end and control on the other. So we talk about giving high support to students or families, and then having high control over students and families. So if we give no support and we give no expectations, there's just basically no relationship, right? It's just free for all. We try not to do that much. If we give high levels of support, but there's no accountability, that's doing something for somebody, right? We're just gonna give you a handout. And sometimes we do that, right? Especially think in terms of, Andover tornado or something, right? We're just going to give you stuff. We're just going to support you and love on you. We're doing it for you because you need our help right now. The flip side of that is high accountability with no support. We're going to do this to you. You don't get any voice in it, right? We're just going to expect you to be accountable for this, but not give you any support. In my world, we call those unfunded mandates, right? We get told we have to do something, but we're not going to give you any money to do it. And unfortunately, they happen a lot. The ideal of what we want to do is the red square, which is working with. So we want high accountability and high support. And that works both directions in a relationship, right? We want to both have high support for one another, but we want to both have high accountability for each other. And I tell you what, the partnerships that we've developed with some of our biggest aerospace industries, with Wesley Hospital, that is where we're at. We're truly partnering with one another in a way that we're both accountable. Because we will hear, from an employer, we need workforce. We need you to train these kids and produce better kids. So they want us to be accountable with where we're at and what our outcomes are, which is all well and good, but we also need your support. Right? We need to work with you in order to do this. And that support, that doesn't always mean money. That can mean internships. That can mean classroom presentations. Help us to motivate these kids to want these jobs of the future, to be inspired for these jobs of the future, summer camps, all sorts of things. So that, in order to achieve our goals, we want to work with. And that's everybody in the community, right? That's everybody in the community. Everyone in this room, if you live in Wichita, you are better off if our kids do well. Every one of us is better off if our kids do well. So it isn't a matter of picking and choosing. It's a matter of lifting all of us up and supporting one another with accountability, right? We don't expect just full support and you just saying, take, or we'll give. There's accountability on our end, but there's also accountability in both directions to make us successful. And one of our biggest challenges then is investing in staff. 75% of our budget goes to staff. So we have a significant budget, but that's pretty much all people, what we do, because we know that's our most valuable commodity in our district. So we have issues with the teaching profession pipeline. There are not nearly the number of young people going into the teaching profession as there was definitely 30 years ago, but even 20 years ago. our biggest areas of need and unfilled positions are special education, math and science, and kind of for different reasons. Math and science, the market dictates what we do sometimes, and we can't even come close to competing with when we train people well in math and science, or if they have good skills in those areas, they can make a lot more money in industry than they can with us. Special education is a little bit different. It's somewhat of a calling. It's not an easy job. But it is one of the most meaningful, one of the most important. I'll talk more later about every kid, but us educating every kid in the district, we need special education teachers to do that if we want to make a meaningful life for every single student in the district. So, and that comes from the sport and the community and beyond. So this is not necessarily something you all can. If you want to come see me after I talk, we would love to have you. But I think as much as anything, it's about knowing that in Wichita Public Schools, we're really trying hard for kids. We're really working hard for kids. It is a good profession with a lot of dignity. We have great benefits. Our average salary, not our starting salary, but our average salary, our average teacher makes close to $70,000 a year. And with some time off in the summer for family and things, that's a pretty good career for a lot of people. Now, it takes a lot of work and a lot of time. And from August to May, it's a lot of late nights. But there are some benefits to the job. It is a good job. And you can have impact and make meaning, which I know a lot of people are interested in. So last few things. We all build Wichita. So I'm stealing the Greater Wichita Partnerships moniker there. But it's we, right? We all build Wichita. And I think that in doing so, I think it's important to know that, at least for me personally, but I know for our leadership team, that we are dedicated to every kid in the district. All right? We have students at the juvenile detention facility that have made bad choices in life that we are educating, that we test, and that's part of our test scores. Those kids, most of the time, have incarcerated parents. We need to change their trajectory, and there's no way to do that unless we try and invest and work with those kids. We have kids that are wheelchair bound or nonverbal, and that we work with just to have a good quality of life. We have kids at Chisholm Life Skills. I always call them kids. They're 18 to 21-year-olds, so they're adults. But these are people with developmental disabilities that can find gainful employment in our community if we're willing to work with them. A lot of these individuals will end up at Starkey or Catch or Res Care, one of those facilities. But a lot of them could work all sorts of jobs in our community if we want to reach out and work together and work with them. And this for me is, we need workforce, right? We hear this all the time. So let's try to get every kid from Wichita Public Schools ready, regardless of where they're at. Let's get them ready for the workforce. And then every student matters on all ends of that. So I have a student who's at Northeast Magnet, college bound. I have a student at North High, and he loves not being in honors classes and just being a normal kid, and he plays soccer, right? So we need to be able to educate both those kids and every kid in between. I didn't share this data, but we have last year 112 different languages spoken by students in our district. So we have a large refugee and immigrant population. We have what we call newcomers, which are students who sometimes could be 10 years old, who have literally never stepped foot in a school before, maybe never put shoes on before, and we bring them in and try to teach them, right? Like, their test scores are not going to be very good, guys. That's just the reality of what it is. But is that noble and meaningful work? Absolutely, because every student matters. We have to try to educate everyone. And it may not always end up being the ultimate outcome we're looking for, but if we can get growth out of that student and get them acclimated and connected here in Wichita, that's what we're all about. So I'll talk for a second then about workforce training and talent development. Oh, I did want to share this slide too, another ACT data point. And this one's really small, but I do think this helps to explain, when people say, oh, and if you compare us with some other districts in the state with similar demographics, our data is better than them. But this chart here, and you don't need to be able to see it closely to understand what it is. This is ACT results, okay? English, math, reading, science, all four. The left-hand column is the students who took the ACT, their families make over $150,000 annually. That's the blue column. The yellow column is 150 to 120. The red column is 100 to 120, and it goes down to the students that are living in poverty, and they're either 0 to 120 or $24,000 a year. So the more affluent you are as a family, the better your kids do in Kansas on the ACT, right? And we know this. We know parent support makes a huge difference in the outcomes of kids. We know that. But this is a challenge for us with 78% of our students living in poverty. When you look at this chart, it helps to understand that is essentially a straight line, right? The more money you make, the better you do, and the less money you make, the worse you do. So we work with every kid, though, and we're not going to turn anyone away, and we don't even really kick them out here. We just put them in an alternate education placement. So this is part of our challenge and our ongoing challenge. So I want to talk about the exciting thing. I think Joseph handed out a small square of paper. This is one of the other things we're trying to do to get kids ready for the future, to connect to workforce and to retain talent. So the Future Ready Center, the picture here is me next to Diane with Mayor Whipple, Dr. Utash, and Dr. Thompson. This is the old Dillon's building next to North High that we've remodeled and has become an advanced manufacturing training center. So the model that we're working off of is we're trying to get kids ready to go straight into the workforce in our aerospace and manufacturing careers. We're trying to inspire kids. Remember that elementary level. We want to kindle the flame. We want to inspire kids to go into these jobs. They're great jobs. We need kids in these fields. They're high-tech jobs. They're clean environment. These are the jobs of the future that Wichita needs. So we're trying to get kids excited about them. And then it's a one-stop shop for business and industry. So anybody in the aerospace world knows, hey, I can go to the manufacturing center, I can talk to kids, I can recruit kids, I can invite them, etc. So we have kind of some open-ended tours that we're going to be doing. If you'd like to come by and see it, I think the first and third Wednesday of every month. Eric Shipman is the principal there. He'll be providing tours. I think Kathy and Hazel and Diane would be happy to help you with tours too. And they know Eric, and they can get in touch with you if that time doesn't work for you. But this really has become a linchpin for what we're trying to do, because it is that ultimate collaboration. So it's WSU Tech and WPS. We work together. The kids get college credit. They get credentials. They get ready for the jobs of the future. It's the Future Ready Center, and you can't see it very well in the picture, but all of the stuff in the facility is on wheels because we know the future is going to look different. So in 10 years, we can wheel this stuff over and we can put new stuff in, knowing that that's what the students need for the future. Really trying to think forward, and then we tailor what we do in this facility to what we hear industry needs. So one of the things we heard, we didn't have a pathway for this. This isn't a course we teach, but we heard we hire these kids, they don't know how to run a forklift. You can't legally train on a forklift until you're 18 years old. So we don't have any forklifts in here. But what we got are forklift simulators that are pretty cool. And so it's screens, and it's kind of like a video game, but it has all of the, and I'm not a forklift guy, so I don't know what they're called, but it has the pedals and it has the gears, and you can, and if you mess it up, it tips over and it turns red and you have to start over again. So all of the kids can at least get the feel for it, right? They can at least start learning the skills and say, that is something that I want to do or something that I don't want to do. So directly responding to what we hear from industry and trying to make that happen. So as far as working together, remember there's restorative practices we want to work with. If we want to retain talent in Wichita, and you've heard me talk about the Greater Wichita Partnership, I'm on their strategic advisory team, and we've tried to align our efforts with WSU Tech's efforts, with post-secondary efforts, with what the workforce needs. So advanced manufacturing is one of the 7 economic areas that Greater Wichita Partnership is focused on. So we're aligning with that. We have a healthcare Future Ready Center, and soon we'll have an IT Future Ready Center. Those are the 3 main areas of workforce demand in the future. So, but in order to retain that talent, because it's great if we train up a kid in advanced manufacturing, right? But if then they go to Mobile, Alabama for their job because they want to be by the beach, that's great for Alabama, not great for us. Great for the kid, not great for us. So we want to try to retain the talent. And that comes in working with our industry partners and getting them connected, and doing that not in a one-stop shop, but in a longitudinal way. So we do that through youth internships, Textron, Spirit, Cox Machine, Wesley. We have a number of organizations that we do this through the Workforce Center and Keith Lawing, but we do summer internships. We do some internships during the school year, and just that overall connection with industry. The big ones, the big industries have kind of staff that are pretty hands-on with us, but even the smaller industries we need to get connected with. NWI Aerospace is one that has come and toured recently. Metal refinishing, they've come and toured. So everybody needs workforce and everyone needs trained, highly skilled kids. So that's what we're working on. So last slide, what's next? What's coming up? Fall of 23. Right now we're in the middle of strategic planning. So the strategic plan that Dr. Thompson put in place in 2018 was a 5-year plan. So now in 2023, it was good timing with me coming on board to revise the current strategic plan with the school board. So we have a group of about 70 community members and internal staff that are working as a planning team to write the goals and write the vision and the mission. But we are in the course of, here in September, really getting feedback from the community about what it means to be future ready. This is an important thing. It's an important thing for us to be engaged in because we can let people outside of Wichita dictate to us, here's what you all need to be doing, or we can define it for ourselves. And if we all agree, really what our kids need is blank. What our kids really need is show up on time, respect of authority, work as a team, problem solving, cognitive skills, right? None of that's on a state assessment. So we're not going to measure, if that's what we want as a community, we can't measure ourselves off state assessments and say state assessments is all that matters. State assessments matter, but it's not all that matters. We want other things out of kids. We want them to be life ready, we want them to be career ready, we want them to be college ready, and have the ability to read and compute. It's vitally important, but it's got to be more than that. So that's the feedback we'll be looking for here in the future. Kind of our theme is innovating on this tradition, right? We've been here for over 150 years as an institution. We know we need to innovate, but we also know we have a lot of history and a lot of pride in our history. So we want to use that history of who we are as Wichita and build on it and work on building that together. So the strategic plan should be finished November, at least by December of 23, and then we will start working that plan to move it forward in spring of 24. So I think I did okay on time. Hope I didn't talk too fast. So thank you. Okay.
There will always be drug problems in schools. What is the current drug problem situation in Wichita, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So maybe different layers to the question. The current drug problem that's more pervasive is vaping. They're easy to hide. They're odorless. It's hard to catch. They hide them in interesting places sometimes, and there's some that are nicotine, and there's some that contain other illicit substances. So that's the one that's pervasive. The one that's not as pervasive, but way more scary, is fentanyl. And that is not that's not just in our schools. That is in our community too, and that's not just a Wichita problem. Talking with surrounding districts, Mays, Derby, they've had kids overdose at school, as we have, which is terribly frightening for everybody involved. So last year we tried to do a fentanyl campaign with our Super SAC. Super SAC is our Superintendent Advisory Council. So it's a group of leaders from all our high schools that work together with the superintendent. They did kind of some awareness campaign. We showed a video to all the kids about the truth of it, because some of it is just ignorance from kids, not knowing or not thinking before they do things. So I hope that answers your question. I think, that's kind of what we're seeing. So, yeah.
Just a brief question. Given you acknowledge that the COVID shutdown did a tremendous amount of damage to our kids, and right now there's some rumblings of this possibly happening again in the next month or two. I'm just curious, given what you've seen as a professional educator and the harm that it caused, are you willing to push back against the board if they start talking about shutting them down again?
Well, yeah. Maybe we should ask a board member. No, this did come up recently because we had a spot that had some cases, and personally, I hadn't heard of a COVID case for a while, right? As far as it being a thing, and I do think there's more maybe popping up right as school gets back in session. I think, this is personal opinion, Kelly talking, I think the ability to get vaccinated has kind of changed the options that schools have and school boards have, that if you would like to get vaccinated, you have that protection. If you don't want to get vaccinated, you're running the risk of being exposed. And I think in the world, we all kind of, just being here today, you're assuming some risk by showing up next to people that you could get all sorts of things from. I'm not sure if that answers your question. I don't anticipate us closing down. I've not heard that even a little bit ever at all. So, and we went remote. I said close down earlier. We went remote. We never closed fully. So, yeah.
You mentioned teachers and how there aren't very many. My daughter was interested in being a teacher, but she took an economics class and realized just how much college costs right now, and we figured it was something like $400 over the rate of inflation since I went to college. Is there anything in the future that can address this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And when I was going to college I went to K-State 20 years ago, 25 years ago now. I took college loans. My parents worked very hard to get us ready for college, but they didn't give us a dime, right? We had to do it ourselves, and I had some scholarships, but I took loans, and my brother took loans, my sister, we didn't even think about it. We just took loans, right? Today's student, and kudos to you, but all across the board, today's student is way more in tune to that debt and that fear of debt. So we hear that a lot from our young people, that they don't want to go straight into college for fear of that. Particularly for our profession, we have loan forgiveness. If you get your degree and you have loans and you work for us in a Title I school for 5 years, you get your loans forgiven. That's a federal program that's been around for a while. There's also public service loan forgiveness that takes 10 years. But if you really want to be a teacher, you can do those kinds of things. But a better answer is that the state of Kansas is working on a registered apprenticeship for teachers. So the idea that, just like if you're familiar with, what plumbers and pipe fitters do or what IBEW does, basically you commit to working 4 days and going to school 1 or something like that, some combination of doing the job and then doing the coursework, and you get paid for the job, and then, you might pay a little bit for the coursework, but essentially it's a wash. So, I think education's got to move in that direction. I think we've got to make it more cost effective. And it's not just education. Social work is the same way. CommCare can't keep people. Social work costs way too much to go get those degrees. You almost need a master's to do social work. And then do you want to go do a job at CommCare that doesn't pay much after you went into all that debt? But everyone in this room needs social workers, because we have people with mental health emergencies on our streets every day, right? So we've got to do something to fix that, but we don't want kids going into debt to do it. I think that's pretty important. So hopefully the registered apprenticeship gets moving. Our district has other routes as far as grow your own teacher and a para transition course and some of those sorts of things. So we have ways to do it. They're not free, but you can at least make money while you're going to school. So.
So I thought you mentioned that 47,000 students in the public schools, 47,000. How many students are there in the private schools? The second question is, what steps have you taken to prevent mass shooting, like it happened in Parkland, in Texas, or someplace?
Yes. So the first question was, how many students are in private schools?
Private schools.
Yeah, I don't know that answer, honestly. I couldn't tell you that because I guess just because, I mean, I kind of know the other public school districts around us. I could give you a ballpark, but I couldn't tell you the private schools.
Approximately how many?
Well, the Diocese of Wichita, I do know that number. They're around 9,000 students, but they go to Pittsburgh, Kansas. They go all the way to Oklahoma, all the way to Missouri, and it's a huge area when you count all them up. So each of the two Catholic high schools in Wichita have about 1,000 students. Our smallest high school is 800, but we have about 12,000 high school students in our district. But when you start talking Trinity and collegiate and classical, I couldn't tell you all that. Your other question, though, I think is top of mind for a lot of us. That how do we address? It's all of our fear, right? To have that kind of mass shooting. They don't just happen in schools. They happen at malls. They happen at concerts. They happen all over the place. But people who are trusting us with their most valuable thing in life, their kids, we want to make sure we protect them as much as we can. So we have secured entrances. We did another 12 of them this year. So you have to hit the buzzer to get into the building, and then once you get into the building, you have to go straight into the office. We're going to go to that model for every school. We're not there yet, as Kathy knows. We have some of the West Side schools. We need to do that still. But we're working that direction. We also do, try to do things with safety as far as run, hide, fight with our kids. If something happens, here's what we can do. The fear of it is real, and it does happen. But I was just talking to Terry Moses. You might remember or know Terry, she was a deputy chief of police 10 years ago, and she's been with us ever since. She said in her 10 years, we have yet to have an active shooter situation in our schools, knock on wood. Every year we've had a fire in our schools, though. So, we have to balance safety in all the different ways. We've not obviously had any injuries from fire, but, things happen. Safety is a complex thing, and there's such a balance between freedom and safety and not turning our schools into prisons, but at the same time making everyone feel safe. So we do a lot with cameras. We do a lot with, video footage and trying to keep things safe in that way, too. But so, yep.
You mentioned goals. Starting in first grade, what would your goals be for improving student achievement, especially in low-income families?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've invested, I was just talking to Diane about this, we've invested a lot in literacy, especially at the lower levels, in teaching our teachers how to teach reading well and using a lot of the principles. Not to get too into the weeds, but the science of reading and structured literacy, those are kind of the terms for what we're doing. But it's really teaching every kid to read, but it's focused on a lot of strategies for dyslexic students that we know work with dyslexic students or students with learning disabilities, and just using those principles for everybody, for all of our kids. So I think one of our goals will continue to be focusing, and one of the things we do in education a lot is we start this direction, then new superintendent has some idea, and we go this direction, and we go this direction. So we're gonna keep the ship focused on literacy for our young people to really try to move the needle for those kids. We do see, we look at achievement gaps, we look at gaps in English language learners, those sorts of things too, and trying best to serve all those populations. So achievement looks different as you get older because it does need to incorporate more of the math skills. We know in order to keep up globally and keep up as a region, our kids need math and science skills more so than ever. So my work and my world has been pretty focused on STEM education just through the CTE stuff that we've done. So I think you'll see more of that. I think you'll see, that would be our goal, to get more of that in front of kids and really get it relevant to their learning, that meaningful learning. So.
Do you have any measurable goals?
So yes, I can't spout them off to you at the top of my head because they would be different at every grade level. But we screen kids, we test kids 3 times a year on a literacy screener. And again, not to get too far into the weeds, but as kids grow in reading, they have to be tested on different types of tests. So do you know your letters? Do you know your sounds? Blah, 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 all the way on. So we measure that data 3 times a year in addition to state assessment data. State assessment data doesn't start until 3rd grade. So the way we know we're making progress from K and 1 and 2 up to 3rd is by measuring the students on those tests and then tracking that. I think it's important to note, we'll have kindergarten kids, we'll screen them in the fall, right? We screen our kindergartners in the fall. And we'll have 30% of our kids that are at grade level. We haven't taught them yet, right? We haven't had any kind of opportunity to move that needle. 70% of our kids are behind. We'll get that number to, that 70% of behind, we'll get it down to 20 or 30% by the end of the year. But when kids come to kindergarten and they're not ready for school and they're already, they've never seen a book, they don't know a letter, they don't know the language, that makes it a challenge to really keep ahead. So we see great growth in our kids, but that doesn't always translate necessarily into grade level, getting to where we want at the grade level. So.
We've got a new policy this year about cell phone usage in all of the district. Have you had any measurable outcome yet? I know it's only been 2 weeks. Student behavior, that sort of thing.
Yeah, great question, and kudos to the board for being behind this policy. No, my own son didn't like it, for what that's worth. So, in a lot of ways, a lot of our schools were already doing what we put into place as far as policy goes. But we heard, we have a lot of transient kids, that pop from one high school to another. So, they would say, well, at this school I could do this, and at this school I can't, that sort of thing. So this kind of systemizes it across the district. So far, we have not had a big backlash. Even with my own son, when I said, well, does your phone distract you? Well, yeah, I guess it does. Is that why you're at school? Does that help you learn to be distracted? I think they know deep down they shouldn't be doing it. It's just, the idea that it's addictive. It's hard for me to stay off my phone sometimes. So, so far so good, but yeah, we don't have any data yet. So.
Yeah, right now I know you're a captain of a sinking ship. So Wichita high schools are all D and F rated. No. And the Catholic schools have a C or B rate. And Catholic schools, Bishop Carroll's 11,000 a year. Wichita is probably 19,000 per student. And so when you're looking at, when you got a D and F rating on all your high schools, do you ever flunk any students ever?
Well, I'm not sure what the DNF rating is for, but
Kansas Policy Institute.
Okay, but this is why Bishop Carroll's scores are different than us. Right? They have kids with affluence and families that are motivated for kids to be college bound. And we have those kids too, but we also have other kids. To answer your question though, do we fail kids? At high school, yes. I think that was your question. Do we fail kids? Do we fail anybody? We do not. Well, I wouldn't say we don't. There is no good research to show that holding a student back a year helps their education.
They don't know the material.
So you're right. So we have to find other solutions to that, right? The solutions. So you have 2 variables, right? You have learning and time. So we want them to get X learning. We want them to learn how to read by 3rd grade, right? We have X amount of time that we can do that in as a system, and so. What we've done, and this is all of education, this isn't us, but what we've done in education is we've fixed the amount of time we give them, but so the learning becomes the variable. So we can see a year's worth of growth from a kid, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, but if they were already behind, it looks like we failed. What we need is the learning to be fixed and the time to be the variable. We've got to find more time for kids to learn. That could be summer school, that could be after school, that could be tutoring. That your suggestion of holding a kid back is essentially saying just give the kid more time, right? Like that's the solution. That isn't the best solution to hold a kid back, but the solution to give kids more time to learn, that is what we need to do. That takes resources, that takes money, and depending on where a kid comes in and how far they need to get, think of the refugee that's 10 years old who's never spoken the language before. I think we do great by that kid. And someone might say we're doing a D or F work, but I think every kid matters, and I think we need to help that kid get to wherever they can and achieve whatever they can. So we are not perfect by any means, don't get me wrong. Neither is Bishop Carroll, right? They fail kids, they kick kids out. We don't do that. We don't kick kids out. We don't tell kids they can't come back. We keep them, and we try to get them ready. We try to get them ready for the workforce. So appreciate your question, though. And thank you, guys.
Great job. Round of applause for Superintendent Bielefeld. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.